Well, this one's definitely going to live on as a cult classic, and you know that much is true. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a newer release that I'm very excited to talk about, Pinocchio, A True Story. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content like animated movie reviews on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about Pinocchio, A True Story. This sees young Pinocchio run away from his genius creator Jepetto, while accompanied by the horse Tibalt to see the world, and he joins the traveling circus run by hustler Modjafocco. This released on VOD back in March, and it's actually one of 3 Pinocchio adaptations we're getting this year, with the other 2 being from Robert Zemeckis and Guillermo del Toro. And man, what a way to kick all these off. If you don't go on social media all that much, you may not be aware of this, but while this is initially a Russian production, the trailer for the US version went viral due to the very obviously mismatched voices. In particular, one that I just can't believe happened, Pauly Shore as Pinocchio, which is just the most incredible thing to me. Like, even if you were to tell me just 1 year ago we were about to get a new Pauly Shore movie and it's him voicing Pinocchio of all things, I would say you're out of your mind. But here we are. There's a supposed theory, which is based purely on speculation, that this might have been dubbed the way it was on purpose to attract more attention than it would have got. And while I have absolutely no idea if that's true or not, I'm here for it because this horrible dub is what makes this an absolute blast. Now, to be clear, it's really a bad movie, and from what I've heard, if you watch a dub other than this particular Pauly Shore one, it's just a regular bad. But with the voice actors they used for this dub, this puts this movie easily in so bad it's good territory, and it's entertaining enough that it'll be an easy cult classic. Like, you can have so many fun watch parties out of this, and it all makes up for the movie's many, many problems, which we'll talk about very quickly. So, for one thing, the animation here obviously is not all that good. This is the sort of wonky, low-budget, direct-to-video production you'd expect out of something in the mid-2000s in some bargain bin DVD pile. The movements are all disjointed, the expressions can look lifeless at times, and the overall style is reminiscent of unrendered previs effects that you get from like a crappy PS1 cutscene. Not the first movie this year where I got that vibe, by the way. And then the actual story itself will swing from being kind of boring 1 minute to then making certain decisions that feel totally out there the next, which I'm about to get into. Now, besides the use of some of the same characters, this is nothing like the actual Pinocchio story. There's no Jiminy Cricket, no Monstro the Whale, nothing involving Pinocchio lying and it causes his nose to grow. All that out the door, which on its own isn't in and of itself immediately a bad thing. I mean, there have been classic stories that have been repurposed and completely switched around, and they can work. But this can just be outright bizarre for the plot points they choose to go with. So in the main story, you have Pinocchio, who quickly gets fed up of living with Jepetto after like what feels like a day, running off to join the circus with Tibalt the horse. And he becomes the new circus act while being infatuated with his co-star Bella. But in this other storyline that comes and goes at such random points, you'll also have this subplot of a detective named Brioni, who's like the most incompetent detective I've ever seen. And he's investigating this series of robberies in the neighborhood, and he's immediately suspicious of Pinocchio and Jepetto just because. Seriously, the first time we see him, the way he's interrogating Jepetto and not knowing that Pinocchio's there, it feels like something out of a knockoff Monty Python routine, where Jepetto says there's no one suspicious in his house, and the detective says something along the lines of, "Don't you think it's suspicious that you have no one suspicious in your house?" And he acts like he almost has him dead to rights or something, just repeatedly grilling him on his totally normal, cool, collected response, as if he said something off. It was just like a very weird, surreal moment. And these storylines all come together by the end, but it all clearly feels forced in the way they try making the detective stuff so relevant to the main story. And speaking of the main story, that's not all the better either, primarily because it's so uninteresting. The whole Pinocchio-Bella romance subplot is pretty bland, given that Bella has a personality even more wooden than Pinocchio himself, and there's zero chemistry between the two. And the only thing that makes this part of the movie entertaining on its own are the villains, with the very over-the-top Modjafocco and his two sidekicks, who are a fox and a cat, who we get in place of Honest John and Gideon the Cat from the original story. Now, whereas in the original story, Honest John is the leader of the two, and he's more cunning, while Gideon's his silent sidekick and more dim-witted, here, both the fox and the cat talk, and they're both kind of equally foolish. Though the cat actually wields a gun, which he uses very impulsively at several points in the film, including one moment where he just shoots Pinocchio upon immediately laying eyes on him.
Mamma mia! It wouldn't buy!
Which is easily my favorite moment in the entire movie. So if there was one element of the actual story that would make this even the slightest bit of fun, like if you were to take out the ridiculous voice acting, it's that. But I mean, as I said earlier, I imagine if I were to watch any other version of this movie, I wouldn't have nearly as much fun with this, as the good times had by watching these mismatched voice actors just hamming it up in their respective roles. And it's worth noting that the other main actors in this dub are Jon Heder as Tibalt and SpongeBob himself, Tom Kenny, as Jepetto. Now actually, Kenny isn't a bad choice here for Jepetto, basically utilizing the same old man voice we've seen him use in countless other shows and movies he's lent his voice to, which on its own, even though it actually kind of fits, is still a little funny given how every time he speaks, my mind immediately just went to SpongeBob, where he constantly used that sort of voice in various episodes. So even though it's fairly restrained in comparison to everyone else, it did make me think as if the SpongeBob character was doing a read of Jepetto or something, but it technically is fitting for the role. And there's actually one moment of self-awareness from him early on where he's thinking of what to name Pinocchio and he thinks Leonardo, but he quickly abandons that because he starts thinking of Leonardo DiCaprio and Leonardo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it actually got a laugh out of me, but the whole thing still seemed out of place given that's the only moment in the entire movie where it plays things in the vein of other modern self-aware animated comedies that were inspired by the likes of Shrek. Otherwise, the whole movie's all played pretty straightforward. But Shore and Heder's performances are what really make this. And the theory that this was done on purpose mainly stems from the fact that the way they voice these characters, it seems like there's no way they're not in on the joke. The inflections by both of them are so clearly very over the top. The moment that went viral of Pinocchio saying,
"Father, tell me, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see."
Shore plays up the entire movie like that. Well, actually, with the exception of his very first line, which is very oddly straight up out of Frankenstein. But it's actually pretty hilarious. I never thought I'd hear myself say the words, Pauly Shore is hilarious, but the ridiculous performance he gives here makes the movie. And Heder, who also serves as our guide, as we see Tibalt address the audience in the very beginning, saying how he's going to tell us the true story of Pinocchio, also goes big with every line as well. Maybe not quite as over the top as Shore, but there were a lot of really hilarious moments where he leans into Tibalt neighing while speaking, and it sounds like a bad parody, but there's also such a clear confidence in his delivery that you can tell he knew exactly what he was doing. And it's because of them that it makes this movie worth watching. Like I said, if you were to watch this with voice actors who played it mostly serious, then it just makes this a bad watch, especially given all the jarring decisions made and sometimes boring story beats. But with such out-of-place actors giving these completely ridiculous performances, then this really becomes such a good time. Pinocchio, A True Story is a blast. It's not a good movie, but it's still a lot of fun. While its story is boring, it has plot points that don't just mesh well together, and its animation is absolutely atrocious, what makes it worth the watch is this US dub and hearing the mismatched voice actors hamming it up nonstop. Pauly Shore and Jon Heder's voice deliveries make it seem all too clear that they're in on the joke, but because of them, it's absolutely hilarious. Now, while it's not good, it's one of the best times I've had with a bad movie in quite some time, and as I've said numerous times, this is going to be one of the year's biggest cult classics. Pinocchio, A True Story technically gets a 1 out of 10. Especially because the dub really isn't the original version, and if you were to look at this story on its own, it's just bad, but I'd still recommend you see it because the US dub is hilarious. The voice acting going along with all its weird dramatic beats just makes it all the more worth it, and I had such a good time with it. So because of that, despite being a pretty awful movie, I'd still actually recommend seeing it. One of the only times you'll ever hear me say that about a movie I rated so low. Though, in the meantime, let me know, did you see Pinocchio: A True Story, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you have fun with this one, and what's a so bad it's good movie that you always enjoy watching? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.